Yanko na ending komo yene lawyer Benjamin Tachie and Tiedu ending komo na yenje ne thoughts on the developments in Parliament, the position of the Constitution, and what happened our Parliament, whether the Speaker aired or not, and what instance. Now that it stands to set budget, you're shooting it down. What happens? Lawyer, anape mo akwaba.
Yeah, many that's it.
Na mbom zano pay.
Boko namon susu
To clarify issues, as a lawyer, share the course of our parliament now, would you say said the budget was rejected and not said not rejected constitutionally?
This is the question that I think our previous discussion said I will be unable to state a position, but I think my task will be to offer some explanation to the bit of procedure and what Parliament was required to do. And then the specific position will be taken in further actions in Parliament or in court. Okay, so let's see what happened. Last week, we had the budget of the government of Ghana and the economic policy for 2022 rejected by Parliament. And so that means that now the budget that was presented by the Honorable Minister for Finance is no longer before Parliament, and until further action is taken. So according to the law, the Constitution, before Parliament can sit lawfully, it needs 1/3 of all members of Parliament to form a quorum. So that's the quorate number, the number that is required to for Parliament to sit as a sitting of Parliament. So to begin a parliamentary sitting, you need that number there. That is why sometimes you find that if the number is not up to that 1/3, which now stands about 92 members, then a member could raise the matter of quorum, and then if the Speaker obliges, then the House would even adjourn. So just to emphasize the point that the formation of quorum is different, is quite distinct from the requirement of taking decisions. Parliament is not everything that Parliament does that amounts to decision making or decision taking. Parliament does a lot of things, deliberations. Even when Parliament sits normally, you see Parliament will pray. So prayer is even a business of Parliament. Parliament sits and prays. And then you see that there may be adoption of the previous minutes, which we call the votes and proceedings and other official reports. And then you see that sometimes they may, or now it has become a common feature, where you have a number of questions, MPs seeking to ask sector ministers some questions that have already been published. Okay, so you have that. So Parliament can actually sit with 92 members and just do that and adjourn. But that is under Article 102 of the Constitution. That says that you need 1/3 of all members of Parliament to be present before Parliament can be said to be lawfully sitting. Okay, so that is the first basis that we should understand. Then the second one has to do with decision making, which is done through voting in Parliament. So the voting, there are so many areas where specific or different numbers are required for different transactions. But there's a general one that is specified under Article 104. So Article 104 is saying that for Parliament to take any decision, at least half of the members of Parliament must be present. Okay, and then once you satisfy yourself that half of the members are present, then how does Parliament take the decision? Then the Constitution says a majority of members of Parliament will take that decision, or when they vote in favor of that motion. The motion is the proposal for Parliament to take a decision. So when there's a vote on that motion and you had at least half of the members present in the House, and then you have majority of the more than half voting in favor of that motion, then that decision will be valid. Okay.
So if I understand you,
there are different other specific voting requirements that are scattered in the Constitution. So where the Parliament is going to take any particular decision, and that decision is not differently provided for, then this is the general rule that will apply. And one of them is the decision on budget, the national budget. Okay. So in the national, when it comes to taking decision, whether in approval, and maybe a little education on the budget process. The budget is presented by the Minister for Finance or another minister authorized by the President to do so. But remember that the Minister of Finance or any other minister will be doing so on the authority of the President. So after budget presentation, the budget will be within the custody of Parliament or control of Parliament. So Parliament will schedule for debate on the economic policy, the policy of government that informed the budget. That has to be agreed upon before we even go into the provisions made for sectors, the various sectors, including government machinery. I hope you get a picture. So now we moved. The second stage after presentation, Parliament went to taking the session whether to approve or to reject the budget and economic policy of the government of Ghana for the year 2022. And what happened in the chamber on that fateful day of Friday, you had when the Parliament was about concluding debate on the economic policy of the government, we had the Honorable Minister for Finance coming to Parliament and requesting the House to grant him the leave to further engage leadership of the House to reach compromise on certain matters that have been raised by the minority. And so the Speaker ruled that, or the Speaker said that the leave is of the House. So, and then having an obvious disagreement, across the aisle, he wanted to get that decision directly from the House. And that is what brought in the first level of voting. And so you see that in the course of that, some matters were raised, and that you find the majority walking out of Parliament. And when the majority walked out of Parliament, I think we saw that there was a suspension of the House for a while. And then upon return, the proceedings continued. And the first voting was resumed, the one to grant or reject the request or the prayer by the Minister for Finance. So when that one was taken, okay, it went against the prayer or the House denied the prayer of the Finance Minister to further engage the leadership of the House in respect of the budget. And so they continued on the budget, the vote on the budget, the economic policy itself, the main item, which was waiting. So at the time, we still did not have the majority in the House. You had only the minority, and upon a count, the number was 137. And the Speaker went ahead to put a vote on whether to approve or reject the 2022 economic policy of the government of Ghana.
All right. So, lawyer, give me a bit of clarity here, because I'm trying to reconcile Article 104, where it states that except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of the members of Parliament present. And then, if you look at 1 second, let me find it for you, and then so that you can help me understand. Article 174, where it says that Parliament, 1743, where it says Parliament may, by resolution supported by the vote of not less than 2/3 of all members of Parliament, exempt the exercise of any power from the provisions of clause 2 of this article.
Yes.
And this is related to issues to do with taxation and issues to do with finance.
Yes. Yes. So as I began with my discussion on Article 104, I made a point that provision sets out the general rule. The rule that will apply if the Constitution does not specify a certain number requirement to vote to take a decision. So you have what you have said is in respect of taxation, and then you see that a different number is required when it comes to voting in respect of that matter. When it comes to even annulment of regulation under Article 11.7, a different number is required. A different number is required in respect of international agreements and all that. Okay, so the general rule, so you just have to look at the transaction in question. If it doesn't fall in those specific or special circumstances, then the general one will apply. And that is why I made a point that when it comes to when it comes to voting on the economic policy of government under a national budget, there's no specific or there's no special number established by the Constitution. So for that reason, the general one under Article 104 applies. Okay. So, hello?
Yes, I'm trying to understand why the general one of Article 104 applies. When, for instance, if you look at from Article 174, which is captured under the finance, it focuses on expenditure of government and then its revenue targets and co. And it stipulates the processes that Parliament would have to go through in ensuring that government's projected expenditure is handled by Parliament. And so you realize that where it speaks about the 2/3 falls under this category.
Yes, so budget, when you talk about the national budget, its preparation, approval, and all that, that provision starts from Article 179. Okay, so the budget matter you're talking about, Parliament, the tax.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's about taxation, right?
Yes.
Parliament is the only body that can impose tax, either under a substantive act of Parliament or under a subsidiary legislation. Okay, so that provision you've read is just about taxation. Remember that the budget will not be imposing tax. It can only give indications of what step that government will take in future. So we are dealing with the policy now. Okay, we are dealing with the policy now. Remember that whatever that has been suggested, like the e-levy, like the two levy abolition and all that, they would have to come through bills that will follow the approval. It's not the budget that will conclusively deal with these matters. We are at the policy level. The budget adoption will follow implementation. So to implement the budget, you need the revenue taxes and other things to come in. And when it comes to that, or there is a need for a waiver and all that, then those provisions will apply. So that is the level that we should look at these requirements. But I'm not sure it has been any doubt about the applicability or otherwise of Article 104. Okay.
Oh, lawyer.
So, yes.
So in this instance, issues about quorum doesn't come in. Issues about
I started by distinguishing between Article 102 and Article 104. I said the quorum is the number that you need for Parliament to sit lawfully. Okay. You need to start a meeting. You know, quorum is applicable in meetings, and so you need that minimum number before the meeting can start. Okay. So that is about that sitting requirement. Then we are saying that when Parliament meets, it's not all the time that Parliament will meet and all that it will be doing is to be taking decisions. Parliament can do so many other things that will not call for decisions. For example, a statement can be read by a member. a question can be asked of minister in charge of a particular sector. These ones are not decisions taken by Parliament. Okay, so decisions, when it comes to decision making, the Constitution says that 1/3 of members, which runs to 92, about 92 now, can be in Parliament and starts. That's why sometimes when Parliament sits and we are not aware of some of these provisions, we think that, the members are not in the House and all that. The constitutional requirement would have been met. In some other jurisdictions, even 3 members can form quorum in over 600 member parliament. So quorum is quite different. The Constitution is saying that when you have sat lawfully with the 92 present, when it comes to taking decisions, that one, the minimum number that must be present is 138. Some have suggested, it's 275.
Yeah.
So half, the minimum of half, would definitely be more than 137. And of course, the human body or human being is not divisible, and none of our members is. So definitely that is why there's a running up to the next point, even though that has also been suggested. But I think that the purpose here is for us, the Constitution intended that we should have a good number of our representatives to be in Parliament before decisions that will affect our lives will be taken.
All right.
And so definitely, if you take account of this, then you cannot say that the Constitution intended a lower figure when there is a decimal point.
Now, if per what we saw yesterday, last Friday as laymen, constitutes a rejection of the budget of the president, what happens next?
Okay, so yes, my response to that is that the budget has been rejected. That is the decision of Parliament as we stand now. Parliamentary proceedings are akin to that of the court. The fact that you think that a court decision is quite defective is against the weight of evidence, the weight of the law, and all other matters, does not give you any power to ignore it. That is the decision of the court. So Parliament decision, no matter what one may see as unconstitutionality or procedural impropriety or whatever it is, the fact is that Parliament of Ghana has taken a decision to reject the budget for 2022. And so that being the case, now the slate is clean. So a new budget would have to be presented to Parliament, and then the entire process will have to be hard. Okay, so, or if a member or a group are not satisfied with that decision, or they feel that there have been some impropriety in the process, they can come by a substantive motion or a motion to rescind that decision. Okay, so, and definitely that one too would have to be admitted by the speaker, and when it's also even admitted and then it's moved in the House, definitely you require the same majority rule to apply to adopt that new motion or to reject it. And this is where the numbers in Parliament may not help the cause of the one who is challenging it. Because remember, the speaker is not in town, I'm told. So if that's the case, then one of the deputy speakers will have to preside. And when you are presiding per the standing orders of Parliament, which is also a critical component of the laws of Ghana, that presiding officer, that deputy speaker, will lose his votes, cannot vote on that motion. So that being the case, and if and I'm sure I'm guided by the words I'm using, if the parties or the groups stand in their entrenched places, then you're still going to have an equality of votes, which will mean that that motion would be lost again. So now the next viable step will be to go to court. But of course, time constraints will not, make that option a viable one. Because definitely, if it takes 3 months for us to get determination from the court, I'm not sure at that time we'll still be waiting for Ghanaians to be in the hang. So the obvious choice for us which is not subject to anybody's comfort, but in the national interest, is for the two, for leadership or for parliament to work as, in consensus. The president, when parliament was inaugurated, made a very profound statement that Ghanaians want, politicians to work together. Okay, so this is a critical point where that demonstration must be had. We should have our leadership working together. The minority has raised a number of issues. And to me, as a Ghanaian, some of these issues are quite fundamental. And you remember that the prayer of the Minister for Finance was for him to get engagement on those matters. He said to engage, further engage leadership of the House, but definitely it can only be on the budget. So these matters appear to be, on the process of resolution. And so the leadership of Parliament working closely with each other and meeting some of the, demands or the concerns raised will be the obvious one in the public interest. Budget is a very important instrument that drives investment. So when there's any uncertainty created, you may repel investors. And nobody can survive without investment. We are crying for jobs and all that. Investors will look at some of the provisions in the budget and to respond accordingly. So whenever there's a hand, remember other countries, we don't live in an island. Other countries are moving forward and they may be at the point of attraction.
Lawyer, in ending our conversation, there is some education I need. So an appropriation bill will be laid, and then that would authorize the expenditure as contained therein. Now, if you look at Article 180, where it says that where it appears to the President that the Appropriation Act in respect of any financial year will not come into operation by the beginning of that financial year, he may, with the prior approval of Parliament, by a resolution, authorize the withdrawal of monies from the Consolidated Fund for the purpose of meeting expenditure necessary to carry out services of government in respect of the period expiring 3 months from the beginning of the financial year, or the coming into operation of the Act wherever is earlier, whichever is earlier. I'm trying to understand. So the point you made about either going to court or the process starting again, the appropriation bill then does not come in at all. Is that it?
No. So if I may take you a little bit to the budget process. After presentation, that some minister must present the budget under the authority of the President. Parliament will approve the economic policy of the government, and following that, through the committees of Parliament, the sectorial expenditure or budget will be approved. And when all that is done, a bill will be prepared, which is the appropriation bill. And this bill will be passed like any bill that comes to Parliament. And that is the one that will authorize the government to spend the money so approved or contained in that bill. But what you have read is another option which took place even in 2020, because we're going to have general election in December. So you can do vote on account. That as an alternative, when the President feels or decides that it may not be appropriate to do a full budget for the ensuing year, it can put a request before Parliament to get an authority to spend a specified amount for 3 months. Okay, so but the point is that if that is even put before Parliament and approved, next year the President will still have to send the Minister of Finance to bring in a fresh budget. So we get to square one. That is why I'm saying that to bring quick finality to this impasse, we want our leadership, I'm speaking as a Ghanaian, we want our parliamentarians to work in unison. This is a matter of national interest. I'm sure that every political party, every member of Parliament exists with the authority they have to promote the national interest or the public interest. And so this matter having come up, that is what we want from them.
Like and subscribe and click on the notification. Happy FM. Nimdie. Happy FM and Nijenkwa.